morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to this talk. In this SMART4SEA series of talks, we will be discussing about a hot topic of the era we're living in: cyber resilience, cyber safety, cyber security, past, present, and future. Now, connectivity is, in these days, during the COVID era, an essential part of safety on board, but comes with cyber risks. In the next few years, more failures related to cybersecurity due to human intervention are expected on board and ashore. In order to manage cyber risks, organizations need to have the right tools to identify vulnerabilities, to defend against various set of threats. Becoming cyber resilient is vital for every stakeholder within the maritime industry to prepare for, respond, and recover from cyber attacks, as we have learned the hard way so far. So we'd like to discuss today where do we stand in terms of practical terms, the relationship between COVID and possibly increasing cyber risks, any sort of alarming trends, lessons to be learned, emergency preparedness, and how as an industry should we, let's say, become more cyber resilient. Now, we are delighted to hosting in this talk three key experts. Let me introduce them to you. Have Akshat Arora. Akshat is the senior surveyor of Standard Club with expertise on the cybersecurity space. Jim McKee, who is the chief executive officer of WAPAC Labs Corporation, best known probably in the maritime space with the name Red Sky Alliance. They're producing an intelligence service in cooperation with Riot. And last but certainly not least, Mark Sutcliffe. Mark is a well-known face. He's the managing director of CSO Alliance and Maritime Cyber Alliance. They're providing also a service for the cyber space as well. Gentlemen, welcome to this talk. I would like to thank you for taking the time to discuss with us the topics we have here. And in lieu of an introduction, let's have an opening presentation, short presentation by Akshat, and we'll continue with Jim and Mark. Akshat, the floor is yours. If you can share your screen and let us have a quick presentation.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Apostolos, for having me here today. The topic you have introduced already, Apostolos, so I won't talk about this much. So the maritime industry, like most other sectors, is increasingly dependent on digitalization, connectivity, and automation to improve its efficiency and reliability. This dependence means increased exposure to a greater risk of cybercrime. The risks, however, are dependent not only on systems and processes, but also on how they are used, that is, the human factor. The pandemic has forced organizations and individuals to embrace remote work practices with greater reliance on electronic systems. This crisis has also given an opportunity to malicious cyber actors to exploit the situation. There has been a surge of cyber attacks in the maritime industry since last year. Nearly all the major container shipping lines and even IMO has suffered a brunt of such attacks recently. This clearly demonstrates that cybercrime is an emerging threat. And from some of the past incidents, we know that unauthorized access or malicious attacks may have severe repercussions. It is therefore crucial for all shipping companies to have a cyber risk management plan so they know how to react and respond to a cyber threat. In terms of industry guidelines, IMO has given a deadline to ensure that cyber risks are appropriately addressed in the company's safety management system by first DOC audit after 1st of January 2021. However, IMO is not prescriptive in how these recommendations should be implemented. It refers to the Joint Industry Guidelines, the US NIST framework, and ISO IEC 27001 standards as sources of additional guidance. In addition to all this, there are a number of other industry guidance, classification society notices, and P&I club bulletins on this topic. There are some other considerations that go into cyber risk management. These are company and ship specific requirements, national and international regulations, the commercial aspects like OCIMF TMSA 3, element 13 focuses on maritime security. And for bulk carriers, we have right ship inspection checklist, which includes the cyber aspect. And last but not the least, the insurance implications. That is an assessment on what is covered and what is not. When addressing cyber risk, it is recommended to adopt a three-step approach. That is the people, process, and technology. From the people aspect, the awareness gap perhaps is the main reason why cyber threats and associated risks spread so quickly. It is therefore essential that effective cyber risk management should start at the senior management level, and it should be embedded as an organizational culture at all levels, the ship and the shore. In terms of processes, the procedures for cyber risk management must be aligned with existing requirements contained in the ISM and ISPS codes. For ease of comparison between the cyber and non-cyber related risk, it is recommended to use the same methodology as for other safety or environmental risk in the existing safety management system. It is essential to understand that the risk assessment process is not a one-time exercise. Process effectiveness should be reviewed regularly. And lastly, from the technological aspect, the right solution for each organization will be different. And to assess the risk, it is essential for any company to evaluate its IT and OT system capabilities. IT stands for information technology, and it covers a spectrum of technology for the information processing. Some examples are email, plan maintenance system, procurement system, electronic manuals or certificates, etc. OT, on the other hand, stands for operational technology. It refers to the hardware and software that directly monitors and control physical devices and processes. For example, your bridge systems, the cargo handling systems, propulsion and machinery management systems, access control systems, or the communication systems. Traditionally, the OT and IT systems have been separated, but these are very much integrated now. So it should be known that the disruption of OT systems may impede the ship's operation or cause risk to safety of life, property, and environment, while the disruption of IT systems could lead to significant risk ranging from reputational damage and legal to financial losses. Mitigation strategies to counteract cyber threats should be a multiple layered approach comprising of protection measures which consider the role of people, process, and technology. Companies should understand the threat, identify vulnerabilities, assign key roles and responsibilities, define internal processes, and develop contingency plans to detect and respond to a cyber event in a timely manner. For business continuity purposes, it is vital to restore the systems as soon as those have been attacked. On board the ships, the defense approach should be driven on maintaining the basics. Appropriate measures can be established easily by raising awareness, developing a cyber sense, maintaining a cyber hygiene, and following correct procedures. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Apostolos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akshat. Thank you very much. Now, let's move to Jim and Mark. Let's start with Jim. Jim, can we have a brief introduction by your end on what you do and what you bring to the table with respect to cyber?
Thank you. Yes, Wellpack Labs, also known as Red Sky Lines, is in the cyber threat intelligence business. And people say, well, why do I need intelligence? I have nothing worth stealing. Well, everyone has something worth stealing these days, be it usernames and passwords, data, files, information on cargoes, everything from intellectual property to actual containers. What we have developed over the past 10 years is a system using our sources and our collections, which are global, that we can inform organizations, businesses, ships of what threat has not broken into their network yet. And you'd say, well, Jim, why is it important to know something that hasn't broken in yet? Well, why not avoid a breach if you can by being aware of who's trying to break in? For years, I've used the story of the Siberian slave driver. He's not concerned about all the wolves in the world, not all the wolves in Siberia. He's only concerned about the one wolf that's chasing his sled through the snow. And that's what we offer to our clients, is we tell them the targeted intelligence that is going after them and how to block it. We can take our data, or you can take our data and take the threats, put them into your internal security, into your SIM, and you can effectively blacklist these threats on a daily or hourly or by the minute basis. If you blacklisted them, they cannot get through your normal security measures. The thing that makes our system so much different is you don't need a wire. You can't hook up a wire to a ship. We don't have wires long enough. We don't need you to install hardware or software or an appliance, because every time you add another piece to your information security system, you're also opening up for vulnerabilities. And so we don't touch anything. We just deliver the data to the proper party.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Mark, let's hear from you, what you do and what you bring to the table from your perspective.
Apostolos, thank you. It's great to be back. And the West Africa session we did, God, 6 months ago was kind of one of the best, actually. So the bar is set high. So look, what we do, we run online communities for company security officers, port and facility security officers, and the focus today is maritime company information security officers, the CISOs. What we do is we help them share ideas and information. We particularly encourage the reporting of incidents, and that helps decision-making, both within their organization and to feed up to their management, and really to close the information gap. People will not and do not share incidents in shipping, and they do in banking, and they do in other sectors, and that has to change. So we have the Company Security Officer Alliance, the Port and Facility Security Officer Alliance, and the Maritime Cyber Alliance. They're free to join, and we assure the anonymity of data to encourage the reporting of this instance. So what we've done is we've run over 60 workshops around the world over the last few years. We've run 2 maritime security conferences. The next one is on the 26th, 27th of May. These are free to join. We have the IMO joining us, the US Coast Guard. We have cyber suppliers, we have lawyers, and we come in and we debate what's going on, and we try and break down the barriers, very much like you're doing in this session at Apostolos as well. And also we support ideas. We were introduced to the Maritime Cyber Learning Cycle by a cyber supplier, Naval Dome in this case, and it's about how we can gather the reports together, analyze the lessons learned, create case studies, agreed case studies with sort of peer group reviews, and then that supports the regulators, the decision makers, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through the questions. So that just gives you a flavor of what we get up to. So thank you.
Okay, now, thank you. Now, I would like to hear from you. We have a deadline on the January of 2021. It's not actually a deadline. It's not an actual deadline anyway. The point is IMO has insisted on having, let's say, cyber procedures and processes incorporated into the safety management systems. Now, the actual deadline is the next audit of each company, of each managing company safety management system. So that could be ranging from January to maybe December. So, but given, let's say we have a deadline of the early 2021, have you seen any difference with respect to where we are now? I would like to also hear from you if you see any impact of COVID to cyber risks. Akshat, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Apostolos. So, like I mentioned in one of my slides, that the pandemic has forced the organizations and individuals to embrace remote work practices. And this has led to even greater reliance on the electronic systems. And the criminals have sought to exploit this situation. So there has been a spike in reports of phishing, malware, and ransomware attacks. In fact, as per some of the media reports, there has been a 400% increase in cyber attacks since the outset of COVID-19. So it is expected that the trend of malicious activities will continue throughout the crisis. Now, in terms of the 1st January deadline and where the industry is standing as of now, so from the Standard Club perspective, the Loss Prevention Department, we have a program of ship risk review and a member risk review, where we assess the members' approach to safety and quality assurance. Now, through this SRR and MRR program, we look at specifically how the members' quality assurance process is. And we have included the cyber way back last year as a means of assessing members' maturity, cyber maturity level. And there has been a huge disparity. I mean, if I have to talk in terms of some of the companies have been investing largely into the cyber space, their maturity levels, while some of the companies are just doing for the sake of regulatory compliance. They are just filling up the paperwork just to show. So there is a huge disparity as to where the industry stands at present.
I see. I would like to hear from Mark on this. Jim, let's hear from you, your perspective. I'll come back with respect to what companies are doing. Jim, let's hear from you.
We've noticed a big increase, and I always use the term 300 to 400% increase in phishing. People are concerned, they're afraid of COVID, and they see an email that may look official from a government or a healthcare organization, or even something that looks like it would come from their personal doctor or medical center. And so people have lost focus, and they've opened up everything to see if there's something they can do or something they can learn. Early on last year, people were looking for vaccinations that were just recently becoming available. And so by opening up these phishing emails, which are hitting people at offices and working from home or working from a safe port, well, they're opening them up and they're being infected with things like TrickBot and TrickBoot. And those are the Trojans that the hackers use to then insert malware and ransomware. So you get the fear factor of COVID, people lower their defenses, and then they get the Trojans put into their system. So it's still growing. You know, I'm lucky enough to have had my 2 vaccinations, but there are plenty of people out there around the world who haven't had one yet. And so they're very concerned about this, and they'll fall for the phishing.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I think the threat and the impacts were growing kind of even without COVID, but COVID certainly accelerated. And bear in mind that the estimate is about 1% of the world's GDP is lost to cyber crime, and that's from McAfee. And to put that in context, that's an estimated $1.5 trillion per annum. That's 3 times the size of Walmart's annual revenue. So what do the hackers do with this colossal amount of money? Well, they're investing in new tools, they're investing in new training, and in new talent. They give them pensions, bonuses, holidays. So don't think for 1 second that this is not going to accelerate or continue to accelerate, in my humble opinion. And bear in mind that we just looked at some research this morning, and 33.10% of companies who do actually pay a ransom don't actually get their data back. So this is incredibly serious. So when you actually look at the great work that Jim and the Red Sky Alliance do to try and open the eyes of companies as to what's coming down the track, there is a real, clear, and credible threat to maritime, and I mean ports, shipping, and the supply chain. So yes, the remote working has made us more vulnerable. It's made it easier for them to social profile. But I think the underlying threat is growing anyway, in my humble opinion.
Okay. Now, do you have any sort of feedback with respect to what happens after the deadline? I know and I understand. You said it earlier on. The people in the shipping industry are very shy and don't like to share. do you have any sort of feedback from your network, let's say, of what is happening after the, let's say, let's so call it the deadline? It's not a deadline. Anyway, let's call it a deadline.
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. I think it's very much work in progress. You know, we've now got our IMO, the regulator, it's engaged, and it's a start. It's not perfect, even by anyone's standards, but it's a beginning. But we have to work with the tools we've got. But I think more importantly, we've got to get the management to buy into what's going on, to have any chance of driving change. Otherwise, I think it'll simply not happen until we're punished enough to learn how to do it. Now, traditionally, shareholders would hold the management to account if the share prices dropped because the appalling cyber principles. But the majority of shipping is in private hands, so there isn't that sort of shareholder pressure. And many ship owners are totally used to taking risks. So that they're not actually sort of seeing cyber as a really credible risk. And that's because we're not gathering the cyber incident information in a credible way and playing it back to the boards going, this is actually what's going on. So we know it's happening. Anecdotally, we talk to enough people in the industry, and really what we'll be discussing in this session is how do we gather this data together so you can really understand the importance of the threat. And there is an impact to the share price if you have to report. It does take time to recover.
Okay, Akshat, can you share with us any sort of feedback with respect to any sort of insurance premiums suggested by the club with respect to cyber?
So talking in terms of the insurance cover, generally the P&I club rules are quite broad. So let's say an incident caused by due to the malfunction of ships navigation equipment or failure of mechanical systems because of cyber attack, it could lead to a third-party liability. And in such cases, the members' normal P&I cover will respond unless the act can be characterized as terrorism or war risk, which are excluded under the club's rule. So it is vital to understand that the P&I cover may or may not respond to that incident, and naturally every case will be dependent on its facts. But then this is the scenario on board the ship when we are and third-party liabilities particularly. But there could be instances which we have seen very commonly, like financial loss caused by ransomware or theft of data or business disruption. For these things, P&I cover will not be responding. And there are insurance covers available in the market which are tailored for these things. And so basically the members are recommended to assess their risk and to focus on whatever insurance gap that they have and fill it up appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Now, Jim, are there any alarming trends, specific alarming trends from what you see? You monitor dark web activity as well. But I would like to ask you specifically any sort of alarming key trends you see in the maritime space.
Well, we're seeing state-sponsored cyber terrorists involved in ransomware. We feel that the country of North Korea has been making their gross national product out of hacking and stealing Bitcoin and ransomware. We've also noticed a very disturbing trend in the market. It's called ransomware as a service. You can go out and buy or rent particular components and set up your own ransomware attacks. They even have banking. They have call centers where they will call and tell people they need to pay. We have an automatic dark web search engine that we actually go out and we search the dark web for our clients and see what's out there for sale. And to make even more money, there are auction sites out there. There's a Russian auction site where they sell data. And it's just like going to a ship auction or a car auction. The highest bidder gets the data. And as you said, all of this money, the trillion or $2 trillion, is going into people's pockets for drugs and guns and human trafficking. It's not just cyber, it's global crime, and it's funding it all. And we're here to stop it. And it's a big job.
An interesting, because Mark said it earlier on, an interesting, let's say, parallel with shipping, the value of the global fleet in shipping is in the range of $1.2 trillion. So as you said, Mark, earlier on, 1% corresponds more or less to the full value of the commercial fleet of the world. That's a huge thing, and it's easier for us in shipping to identify because we're not connected with Walmart or any other, of these huge corporations. Now, from your perspective, Mark, do you see any sort of alarming trends that you would like to point this out for the time being?
We're sort of looking at it in a different way, actually. I mean, and really supporting what Jim said. It's a fact that about 1 million people visit the dark web every month. So rest assured, you need to be aware that the threat is clear and credible. And from our point of view, it's not just the ship owners, it's the ports, it's also the ship brokers, it's the hauliers, it's the ship agents. And here's the statistics. We have 1.6 million port calls per annum between at least the 50,000 ships in merchant marine and about 4,000 major ports and terminals. So there's an incredible interaction of data, of cash, and that is, I'm tragically aware now, is what the hackers are plugging into. So we will be punished until we get a grip. And I'll give you some good news. We had one CISO, he had 56 different insurance policies for his fleet of 20 tankers. Every single one with a different cyber clause, giving different elements of cover. So he said, right, we have it on the board meeting as an agenda every quarter until we understand the threats, because it's just like driving our ships onto the rocks. And here are the drivers. You have an incident, you've got to pay your staff more money for the overtime, you're going to lose business, you've got to employ then professionals to fix your company, you've then got to improve your software and infrastructure, which should have been in good place, good order the first time around, and you've got to train everyone. So really, we're saying insurance is not the answer. You've got to really invest and train and look at the threat differently.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily, I understand what you say, it's not necessarily the answer, but as a last resort, at some point, you should have some insurance. And people in shipping are accustomed to the idea to have as a last resort, let's say, some sort of insurance to minimize their losses at the end of the day. But I'm amazed by the number of 56 that you mentioned. That's a huge number. I would have guessed something in the range of 20, not 56. Anyway, these are amazing numbers, and we're going to see these numbers rise in the near future. Now, Akshat, are there any lessons to be learned from past incidents in shipping? We are, tending to forget easily, I would say. We have the Maersk incident being the most prominent one, let's say, in the maritime domain. But we have, let's say, smaller incidents in scale or significance and so on and so forth. So from your perspective, are there any lessons to be learned? What can you share with us?
Yeah, I agree with you, Apostolos. The sophistication of some of the recent cyber attacks signify that the threat landscape is dynamic and it is evolving at an unprecedented pace. And from some of the recent incidents, what we have seen is that the attackers, through fraudulent mails, they are doing typically three things. They entice the victim to click on a link, and which is embedded in the mail, which will be having a critical subject, like how Jim mentioned about the COVID-19. It could be crew change, it could be something of that sort, and that will just basically make the computer infected with the virus. Or it may contain, the mail could be containing an attachment which contains a virus as well. And there have been also some cases where the hacker might be impersonating other person from the same organization. So in all these cases, basically there is a common sense and treating unexpected mails with skepticism, where you can actually cut down on all those things. And basically it all boils down to the training, how well you're making your people both on shore as well as on board well aware of these risks, how well you're doing your cyber hygiene, so you can cut down on all these sort of incidents. And of course, then there is the firewall and network security and all other tools to assist in this matter.
But I have to say from my personal experience here, we have been hacked, I think, four something years ago, due to a mail. Due to a mail, it was a phishing. Someone opened the email. The point is, if someone sends an email and you have 20 recipients of an email, you cannot be certain that each one can understand that. So anyone might click the email. I can say that we don't have such problems now because we have taken more measures. We've moved to Office 365, meaning we try to minimize, let's say, the potential spam, to put it in that sense. The point is, you can never be certain enough, and we have 45 people here. You cannot be certain enough and sure enough, let's say, that no one will make the wrong move, let's say, to put in that sense. But I understand what you say, the initiative that you have to take, and as Mark pointed out, to train your people and make sure that they're not making the wrong move. But it's a never-ending process, actually. It's a never-ending process. Now, Jim, from your perspective, are there any lessons to be learned for the maritime domain? What do you see?
Yes, they're basic lessons. And I ran a payment processing company for 14 years, and we were being bombarded with people who were trying to steal money. That's the motivator. But what we did is we instituted two-factor authentication for being able to enter any of our systems. All of our data was encrypted in transit and at rest. And so that way, if someone tried to get in, they'd find they couldn't get anything. And it all goes back to what all of us have been talking about, is training and awareness. And you have to have backup data. We had a data center in the Midwest, and we had a hot backup center in Phoenix, Arizona. And that way, if we did see a problem, we could shut one set of servers down, and we had all of our data to the second because they ran in tandem. But this way, by having backups, having security, having encryption, changing our passwords, but the two-factor authentication was the best because you had to have a unit like this to get into anything. You couldn't just have your mother's maiden name. And so the lessons learned, and you used a term here when you sent me this information on the resilience. That's bouncing back from a horrible event. And what you have to do is have a fire drill and look at this horrible test and then back up from that. That is the planning that all organizations should be doing. And I'm sorry I'm at zero.
I fully understand that. So you learn it the hard way if you don't take it, at face value. Mark, any lessons to be learned?
Yeah, we're coming at it. It'll come as no surprise, a subtly different perspective. Because once you've got your kind of crown jewels protected and you've fully trained your staff, which most people don't do either of those things, it's actually going to be down to the quality of your recovery from an incident by which everyone will judge you. And here's the statistic: 81% of the companies surveyed by CyberEdge in 2020 for their cyber defense report, 81% had suffered an incident. So really, you're going to be hearing a lot more about business continuity and a digital recovery plan. It's going to be part of our lexicon going forward. And all you need to know is that 3 out of 4 companies that have this plan recover in 24 hours. If you don't have a plan, do not expect to recover. And it needs to be trained. You've got to be on the front foot. It's not just okay to say to the IT department, take care of it. Everyone has to be engaged. I know one company, the CEO has created a cyber board. He chairs it, and he has every single shore staff and sea staff fully engaged doing the training. And it's now actually winning them business. That's the world we're in. So what we've done is we've created the Maritime Cyber Learning Cycle. We've done this with industry. We're doing it with cyber companies. And really what we do is we take incidents, we explore what's actually going on with the incidents. We're beginning to shape it back to the IACS, the International Association of Classification Societies, is their joint working group, Cyber Solutions, and feeding back case studies of what actually is going on, so we can all see it and agree it and inform better decision making.
Okay. Now, we are talking about the knowns. Now, I'd like to ask about any potential unknowns with respect to cyber security or cyber resilience in shipping. From your perspective, do you see any unknowns, let's say, for the time being, or in the near future? Except.
Yes, like I said before, the sophistication of the attacks basically show that whatever wall that you create, a firewall you create, the hacker may eventually cross over that. So there have been sophisticated attacks recently. And like Mark said, it is essential for the systems to be able to recover. And so essentially, when we are talking about cyber resilience, it is the business, it is the ability of the business to not only prevent and protect against any cyber attack, but also to be able to adapt to the changing environment so that it can detect and deter the next attack. And this is the practically, basically, when we are referring to the cyber resilience, so to say, that foreseeing what could be the next step and be able to prevent that, and basically if something happens, then be able to recover from that situation. So that is what is resilience, and that is basically the known unknowns, basically.
Okay, Jim, do you see any unknowns?
My business is reporting on the unknowns. So thank you for the softball. What we do is we're scraping the web, and we're scraping sources out there, including the dark web, and we're matching the mentions with our clients and industries. So we can follow the financial, the oil, gas, the maritime, healthcare in a general mode, but then we can pull the exact attackers for any domain. And I mean domain, entity. You know, if we can get the IP, we can track the threats against that. And this goes back to my original statement, is we're reporting on things that you haven't seen yet. But with our database and matching it with some open source intelligence, which can give us 0-day and tell us more about the particular threat or threat group, we can do an immediate job of helping people before they're attacked. You know, I have cyber insurance, and I look at the standpoint of, when you buy cyber insurance, you're hoping something bad's not going to happen. But what if you use a service that keeps you from getting an attack in the first place and having a claim? That should be one of the things at the front of the queue here of how do we keep these attacks from happening in the first place?
Yeah. I'm asking this about the unknowns because in shipping we tend to say after an incident, like the one, for example, we ever given, talking about the black swans. And when it comes to black swans in shipping, in our industry, I mean, we say, wow, this is out of the blue. But then you know, gradually everyone says, we should have predicted this. It was something meant to happen. That's why I'm asking about these unknowns, because it makes sense. We see that the bits and pieces are over there, but it seems that we tend to miss the big picture. Now, Mark, from your perspective, are there any other unknowns that we should be aware of?
It's a fascinating question, and so we can show you evidence of $500,000 stolen from a broker, $500,000 stolen from a ship manager, kind of malware affecting OT of ships. There is stacks of data, but it's all isolated. Our job is to consolidate it and make it credible, so it changes behavior. And really, the key question, Apostolos, is so what? What really, with this maritime cyber learning cycle, we're asking ourselves, what are we trying? What behavior are we trying to change? Because people might go, okay, someone else is here. I simply don't care. So we've got to actually make it actionable information that actually they go, oh my God, I can't let this happen to my company. And it's almost like a duty of care of an employee, if you're a CISO or a seafarer or a CEO, a duty of care to the company. So it's a culture change that we're really looking to change. And look, ITIC paid out $4 million on cyber claims last year. So there's one statistic. So we know the money is being paid out. We know a lot of new cyber policies came out. We don't know whether they'll be around in a year's time, because I expect they've got a pretty miserable claims record. So it comes back to, our title is Security Through Community. We've got to really wake up, share the incidents, get a grip, invest in the training, and do the basics. It's not actually that complex. And have your plan, that's tested, then you can recover, and then your management and your shareholders will forgive you. And indeed, most importantly, your clients will forgive you if they can see you're on the front foot and doing it properly.
Yeah, but we also have to, I'm always saying this, we have to understand the changing landscape with respect to ESG, and how especially the listed companies will have their shareholders being, not taking hard on them if they don't do their, let's say, due diligence properly. So we have to understand that there's a changing landscape out there, and we have to bear this in mind in our own, let's say, calculations we do. Yes, Mark, yes.
I say we were with a hedge fund who had invested in ports, and they were horrified with the management's attitude to their cyber policies. It's going back about 18 months. And do not think for 1 second they didn't have the ability to communicate to the management, to get a grip, invest, or they would actually simply change the management. I mean, that's the meeting we had in this London hedge fund. I mean, these guys are totally ruthless. I'm not saying shipping shareholders are as ruthless as that, but that's that's the attitude, that's the culture. And if you don't, that's a humble opinion. I'm not saying it just gives you one perspective.
Yeah. Now, we have to conclude this talk. I would like to ask you one last question. I would like you to sum up something like an advice, or ask you if you could change one thing to make our industry more cyber resilient. What would you change and why? Akshat.
Apostolos, like I said, the cyber resilience is the ability to adapt to the changing circumstances. And basically, the idea is to that any company or an organization should be able to effectively utilize all its assets, whether it be people, information, technology, facilities, to support their day-to-day business. The defenses should be fortified. And for this, there is a lot of industry guidance available. But from my side, I would just say that stick to the basic. Do not make it too complicated. The US NIST framework actually provides 5 functional elements. Those are the basics. And if those have been taken care of, like identify the risk, detect the risk, protect assets, responding and recovering, these are the 5 basic elements. If all those things have been taken care of, I think the organization can aim towards the cyber resilience. Do not try to complicate the matter, and keep it pretty simple. That is my suggestion.
Thank you. Jim, your thoughts?
Well, I think we've covered them all in various ways, but I think awareness from the top management down to the lowliest clerk, people have to be aware, they need to be trained. I talk to companies all the time that say, oh, we had training. It's like, well, when was it? Oh, it was about a year ago. Well, that's overdue. You need to have ongoing training, ongoing awareness. And as I said before, there's some very simple things here of 2-factor authentication. And we've seen SAP systems that have been spoofed. And you have to look very carefully that everything that comes through. We've also noticed that there are people demanding money. And it's not that it's ransomware yet. A request comes in late on a Friday afternoon that so-and-so needs a wire. Don't send the wire. Pick up the phone and call the person whose email was keylogged, and you're getting spoofed, and you're going to send some money to Cambodia, and you're never going to get it back. And so you have to question, you have to ask questions, you have to have protocols to follow. And I'm not going to bore you with protocols. We could talk for another hour and put your audience to sleep. But the thing is, we know what they are, and you have to follow them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Jim. Mark, your take.
I kind of sort of want to finish on a sort of an upbeat tone. There is a lot of progress. IACS, the IMO, the P&I clubs, as we've heard from Akshat, people are really investing a lot of time, effort, and energy. And you have to, because as we've established, the criminals are making $1.5 trillion a year out of this. So, and what do? They sell our information. They've stolen from us. That's all they're doing. So really, we as an industry, it's beholden on us to get a grip, start trusting each other, anonymize and share the incident information. And as Jim so elegantly says, you have to train your people. You don't train them, you can't expect to get the culture change that's required to ensure your company can recover from an incident. I don't think it's a matter of when, it's the recovery. We should just be a little bit more open and honest about that simple fact. And as, yeah, our mantra is security through community. So yeah, I'd naturally believe in it. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for the beautiful ideas you brought to the table. Thank you for pointing some very interesting numbers. I'll keep the 1.5 trillion. So the value of the global merchant fleet is vanished every year due to cyber security incidents. That's a very impressive number. I keep the 56 insurance premiums. Mark brought it to the table. I'm sure that we're going to hear more in the near future because cyber security and cyber safety and all these things are here to stay. As the industry is moving towards a more digitized future, we're going to see more threats in the near future. So, and it's not going to stop here. And I'm sure that we're going to see a number of organizations, as Mark correctly pointed out. A lot of stakeholders are investing in this, absolutely. But the point is, we cannot raise the awareness of people, as Jim pointed out, and as all of you pointed out, we cannot raise their awareness from 0 to 10, from one day to the other. And people do not in our industry understand what Jim pointed out. You trained them a year ago, it's overdue. You have to retrain, you have to keep them up to date and keep them up to speed. And people, you know, in our industry tend to think like a checkbox, I've solved the problem and I put it on the drawer. I'm not going to be revisiting this problem anymore in the future. So that's something that cannot change from one day to the other. So I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank all our viewers and looking forward to seeing you in one of our future talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.